that I am on, this journey of peace, of quietness, of healing. I do think that it's allowed me to take a step back and to really focus on what's important for me. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. I am so excited because this is actually the first episode of my new podcast series, the Elevated Women's Club. And the reason I chose that name was because every day I feel like as women, there's something that we are elevating within our lives. We are constantly looking to share our stories, to connect, to evolve. And as I go through this journey that I am on, this journey of peace, of quietness, of healing, I do think that it's allowed me to take a step back and to really focus on what's important for me and what's important for, those around me. But most importantly, it's allowed me to connect to myself. And I really just want to share some of these things that I've been learning because I do feel like I am elevating. I am working on myself day in and day out. And it's not working on yourself in the way that you would think, right? I'm kind of in this soft girl, feminine energy rediscovery process, and I am honestly loving it. And I know so many of us need to just settle in, reconnect, find ourselves again. And I want to make sure that we are all together on this journey. So I am starting this podcast from scratch, just whenever I feel inspired to connect with you wonderful, beautiful ladies and just see where it goes. With that being said, I feel like in order for you to start that process, you have to get really real with yourself. You have to get to the core, get to the root, and you have to think about where you started. And that's a loaded question, right? That looks like so many things for so many different people all over the world. We all have things that we go through in life, our experiences, our upbringing, how we were raised, who we were raised by, in what environment we were raised, and it shapes us. It shapes us. And so the reason I chose, You Are Not Your Trauma for today's episode is because we've all experienced trauma. In some shape or form, we have all had something in our lives that we have probably gone through that we didn't deserve, we didn't ever think we would go through. Maybe it's happened to other people and now something's recently happened to you, or it could even be something did happen to someone and now you're seeing that and you're like, I'm slightly traumatized by that experience that they're going through, or that person's projecting on you. It takes so many different forms, right? And we all have our own stories. So when I think about trauma, I think I had a very limited view on what it was, and especially being in a minority community where it's really suppressed. It's not talked about. We don't share things that have happened to us, and it's repressed. That I didn't really want to expose that side of me. I didn't want anyone to know that I've had traumatic experiences in my life. And, when I'm thinking of it, I'm like, am I the only one going through this? Am I the only one experiencing these things? And in your heart, you're not, but it's also embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say, I've had this experience happen to me. This person treated me poorly. I've been through this certain situation, whether that was, you had an abusive parent or family member. Unfortunately, you were sexually assaulted or abused, or if it's just someone is not being in your life anymore due to a death or some type of physical harm that came to them. All of these experiences shape us. And unfortunately, statistically, you are 2 times more likely to remember a negative experience, no matter how small it is, over a positive one. So whenever we go through things and we're learning, right, as children, right, think of yourself as a young child. You are only operating based on emotion. Even as an adult, you're just about always operating based off of emotion because we are emotional creatures. And when you have something negative happen to you, you remember it more. You are unfortunately going to remember it more over a positive experience. You will also remember somebody treating you negatively more so over someone treating you positively. That's why people tend to take other people for granted, right? When they do nice things for them, or they just expect it, right? But when somebody treats you negatively, you remember that. You harbor it, you think of it, you hold resentment to that person. And that creates stress and tension and trauma inside your body. Okay, we have all experienced this, I'm sure, in some level and in some way. So when I think of the woman that I want to be, I want to be someone who is healing, someone who has processed what she's been through, and she's not allowed it to overtake her life. And I know that I'm not alone when I think of these things, right? So that is why it's really important for you as a person, if you're going to take your life to the next level, you have to do the work on yourself. As Jim Rohn said, you have to work harder on yourself than you do at your job. But not everybody wants to do that, right? It's scary. And I will be the first one to tell you that my healing journey is very fresh, right? We are talking about a year and a half max, because unfortunately, what I had been through, I allowed toxic family members, toxic friendships into my life, and I was that person. And I realize where it stems from now, clearly, because I did the work on my trauma and realized that a lot of this came from childhood, right? As so many of us experience. As children, you cannot process things the way you can as an adult. You're not even allowed to, right? So it's something that you have to acknowledge now in your older age. The problem comes into play is when people don't acknowledge the trauma that they've been through, and it manifests its ways into different parts of their lives as they're adults, like aggression or passive aggression, self-harm, depression, anxiety. You know, the list goes on, because unfortunately we are emotional beings. And when you don't acknowledge those emotions and they don't get recognized, they get buried. And eventually, when something gets buried in your body, it's going to come up in ways that you do not want. So when I tell you you are not your trauma, it is easier said than done. Like, I get it. And if you are anything like me, okay, you could be a person who represses emotions and past traumatic experiences. Or if something happened, you are always on guard. You're hyper vigilant. You're always waiting for the ball to drop, something negative to happen, someone to say something to you that you could be offended by, and then you're triggered, right? Like in an instant. And what you have to think about, is that the way that you want to live your life? When I thought about healing my trauma, there's so many different paths and stories I can tell you. But I will just say that my sister is instrumental in just who I am today. And I'm so thankful for her, because she did a lot of work on herself. And I think I was doing work. I was doing more personal development, self-development, trying to find the next business, trying to migrate careers, like just trying to always add something to my list of accomplishments. Because as a child, that's how I felt validated. That's how I was validated. If I did anything that didn't have some type of monetary or, other self-accomplishment, then it was almost demonized. Like, I was not rewarded, as I'm sure many of us were, for just existing. We weren't, praised. We weren't loved. We weren't accepted for just who we are. We had to do something, like something was tied to it. Especially as the oldest daughter in a minority household, so many of you, I'm sure, watching this can maybe relate. I put so much pressure on myself, and I got to a point where I was getting burnt out. I was trying to prove myself to my boss, trying to prove myself to my parents, trying to prove myself to my friends. Look at what I'm doing, what I've accomplished, what I've set out to do. And I was holding myself to all these different things because, again, I was just trying to pile things on. And it was coming and stemming from a place of trauma. And my sister told me one day, she's like, why don't you just do nothing for a year? Why don't you just exist? Like, why are you trying to prove something to someone who doesn't even matter? Right? Like they don't have any control over your life anymore. There's nothing else that you have to prove to anyone. You can just exist. You can be with your family, your two beautiful children, right? That I should be so thankful for. But I couldn't even be in that moment to appreciate the gift of motherhood that I was going through, because I was just like, I have to provide for them. I have to do X, Y, Z. I have to accomplish this. And so many of us get stuck in this rat race and this hamster wheel, and it manifests itself into more trauma, because what you're telling yourself is you're not good enough, that you need to accomplish something to be loved, that you have to do more. And even then, you have to wait because something really bad could probably happen to take it all away from you. And what life is that to live? What legacy is that to leave behind for your children, right? And so I think that where I just had my breakthrough is when I asked myself, like, is this the person that I want to be? When I think back to one example of, past trauma, right, that manifests itself today, and something that I'm actively working on, have gotten so much better at, but I did not know how to deal with conflict. Healthy conflict, not, someone says something to me, I get aggressive. Like, of course, we all have that innate sense of protection within ourselves. But my problem is that coming from my household, in any household, I'm sure, where, you are the child and they are the parent. You have to do what they say. There's no room for explaining yourself. There's no room for definitely not arguing. You are supposed to be seen, not heard. They are not going to allow you to explain yourself, and there are no apologies, right? When something, even that they did, it was wrong. So when I came into the adult world, I had not done any work on myself to be able to properly express and explain myself to people, especially when I felt uncomfortable. Why? Because I was the good girl. I was the one that didn't cause any problems. I was the happy-go-lucky girl, and if I wasn't, I was just a complete B. You know what? So I could either be incredibly nice or I could lose my mind on someone. And I thought about that and I'm like, first off, that can be pretty childish, unfortunately. And I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to have to defend myself in such a way that makes me look irresponsible, that makes me look immature. And I want to be in control of myself and my emotions and my body. And that's my choice. And, that's an example of how it manifests with people. Something as simple as you think you're defending yourself, but unfortunately, it's not in a healthy way. And that's probably coming from some past trauma that you haven't uncovered, that you haven't done the work to uncover, and you probably don't want to, right? Because it's uncomfortable and nobody wants to admit things that are uncomfortable about themselves. Sometimes not even in secret. I've been learning that a lot, is that I have thought about so many things in so many different ways. And healing is a process and it's a journey, but I was only scratching the surface. And there's so much more that I can uncover. And I'm not trying to uncover negative parts about myself. I acknowledge so many great, amazing, beautiful parts of myself, but I wasn't doing that either. And I think that's another thing that we do so much. Again, not only do you remember past negative traumatic experiences more than you do positive, but you also think more negatively on average than you do positively. And when you add that up over time, you have something negative. It unfortunately doesn't leave much room for the positive things in your life, the positive things that you're doing, the person that you are today. And when I thought about it, I just thought that's not the way I want to live. And I know if you have made it to this point in the video, that's not the way you want to live either. Another thing that I actually had to get really honest with about for myself is the fact that I kind of played victim for a bit. And that's something that's not easy to admit for anyone, right? Because I think when we think about, someone playing the victim, it's not even the same way we would consider ourselves. We think about someone who's constantly complaining. They're constantly seeking out, to blame someone for something that they did. They're never taking ownership, never acknowledging that it was them. And those are all victim mindset mentality things that people should work on if that's what they're doing. But it can even be more subtle. It can be you in a shadow work session, getting to the end of your prompt, no matter what that is, and blaming your childhood or your upbringing and said, that's the way I am. Shadow work is for you. It's your shadow self. That may have been where the trauma stemmed from, was someone else. But now what are you going to do in order to change that narrative for yourself? So if you would like to continue to be the same person that you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever you were a kid, that's fine, okay? But if you want to get to that next level and really be at peace with yourself and that you've brought something up in your shadow work sessions that you've been doing that you don't particularly think that's the path you want to continue down. Like for me, again, it would be the not dealing with conflict very well. That's just not something that I'm going to accept and tolerate in my life. If I have something to say to someone, I'm going to say it in a way that is constructive, respectful, or I will leave the situation if we can't come to a resolution. But I'm not going to stay silent. I'm not going to lose my mind, and I'm not going to be passive aggressive. I've just made that decision within myself, right? And that may have worked 20 years ago when I was a kid, but it does not work for me anymore, and it doesn't make me feel good. And just because I see other adults do it to other people now, that does not mean that's going to be my narrative for the rest of my life. So I had to get real with myself. Yeah, it may have stemmed from childhood, me always wanting everything to be perfect and nice and not be in trouble, like little kids do. No kid wants to be in trouble. But now that I'm in my 30s, I have to acknowledge that I can have conflict with someone. We can come to a resolution. We can be adults and we can move on. So when you allow someone, at the end of your thought or shadow work or however you process your feelings and emotions, when you allow yourself to say, it's on them, you are giving your power over to them. And I did this for so long, unfortunately. And I beat myself up about it, but I don't anymore, right? Because I know that this was just something I had to go through, something I had to learn from, and it's just something I'm going to fix in the future. And as I went through this journey, I listened to so many other different types of content. I think I mentioned in the beginning, I was listening to how to make money online, how to have this side hustle. I invested quite a significant amount of money because I wanted a career coach that was going to take my career to the next level, which I clearly did get far enough into my career. And now I realize that it's not even something that I'm that passionate about because now I have kids. I want to build my relationship with him. I want to make sure my kids are good. I always want to be available for them. I don't want to be tied up in meetings and having all these responsibilities outside of them. And, life just happened. And when I thought about all these things that I wanted to do with my life, it just shifted. It morphed because I morphed. And when I started taking in different kinds of content, especially, this is just going to be a warning. I'm going to mention God quite a few times now throughout the video because, my God is someone I was never connected to. Whoever that God is for you, or whether it's the universe or whoever you practice religiously, I just do recommend that you have someone, a higher power, that you seek help, seek comfort, and guidance from. Because that has transformed my life in ways that I never even thought possible. And when I think about my online preacher, who is Eric Thomas, I love him so much, but you should absolutely check him out. His sermons are incredible because he breaks down the Bible in a way that I can actually understand sometimes, because I'm like, wow, I did not think of that lesson in that way. But he did one sermon that changed my life. And it was when you make other people and other things your God. God is a lot of things, okay? He is forgiving. He is patient. He is passionate, but he is also jealous, okay? He's a jealous God. That is mentioned multiple times in the Bible. But he is forgiving and he will forgive. However, when I was going through my journey, I realized I was so disconnected from myself. It didn't even have to do with God at this point. Like, I just didn't even know who I was, right? But it's also because I strayed so far from him and connecting with myself that I made other people my gods. I'm not really big into things like, that's a whole nother video, a whole different discussion for another group of people, right? We're talking about elevating ourselves, right, in this podcast. But I don't make, designer items, clothes, shoes, cars, houses. I don't really necessarily care about those things. As you see, I'm a very, very simple girl, but I was putting people above myself. That's what happens when you don't want to deal with conflict. You are willing to make yourself uncomfortable for either the comfort or satisfaction of someone else, for them to tear you down so badly that you don't even want to defend yourself. And when you do this, it creates a separation within you, because what you're telling yourself and you're telling God or whoever that higher spirit is for you or the universe that you're not valuable. That's what it's telling. It's telling everybody else that too. Your feelings, your emotions, who you are, and how you feel in this moment is not important. That other person, they can feel comfortable. They can tear you down. They can say whatever they want to you. They can do whatever they want to you. And when I came to that realization, I didn't even realize I was doing it at that moment. Now, clearly, I feel a completely different type of way. I am my first priority in life, and then my family. God, myself, family. And then everybody else falls within whatever that means. But I had to come to realization that I was lost. I was in a valley. And when I say God is a jealous God, he wants you to connect with him. I'm like, I could just cry thinking about it right now. That's another part of my vulnerability that I'm working on. But he wants you to connect with you. Unfortunately, when you can't figure it out for yourself, he will bring you to a level that meets him. He will. He will, unfortunately, tear everything that you know away from you. There was a passage in the scripture that talked about Moses taking the people of Israel out of Egypt. And it was where Moses went to Pharaoh, the king, and asked multiple times, like, give me the people so I can lead them into the promised land that God promised for all of us. And it said specifically that God hardened the king's heart so he would continue to say no to Moses, and that God could continue to send plagues or just issues to the Pharaoh, to the land of Egypt, that were going to make everyone see that he was a powerful God. He will do whatever is necessary to make sure that you follow him and that you are on the path that he has set you on. What I realized is that by the time I got into the point where my traumas had affected me so much that I was so unhappy with who I had become. I was feeling so low because other people, they tore me down repeatedly. People that supposedly were supposed to love me, cherish me, they didn't. There was a lot of things that were said towards the end that were very hurtful before I came to the realization that God was hardening my heart. Because by the time I came to the end of some relationships in my life, I had no care in the world. I didn't. There was no tear shed. I've shed a lot of tears, but not for other people. I've shed them for me because that was part of my release from, some of the bad habits and things that people tried to do to me, which we are going to get into in a few minutes of how you heal this trauma, because you have to heal from it. When I was going through all of these traumas that I experienced, I'm like, I got to a point where God hardened my heart and he said, you have to put yourself first. And by yourself, I mean me, because we are made in the image of him. You cannot continue to tear yourself down to make others feel better. And so getting into how we get past some of these traumas and how we elevate ourselves is the same thing that I've been talking about this entire video. You have to get to the root. You have to ask yourself if this is acceptable. Are you going to continue to make other people your God? Whatever that trauma looks like you, whatever that negative experience that you went through is, are you going to continue to let other people dictate the way that you feel and that the way that you show up every single day for yourself and for the people who actually love you, that don't judge you at all? Because chances are, like I was, if you are making other people your God, you're again prioritizing negative emotions over positive ones. You are again probably, empowering those negative toxic people in your life to keep treating you like that, to keep engaging with you, to keep draining you of your energy. And you're probably taking for granted the positive people that you have in your life. You're not giving them enough attention. You're not speaking to them enough. Again, negative, unfortunately, always wins out over positive. So when you adjust your life in a way that you have more positive as opposed to negative, you've removed those negative people, you've gotten away from those negative experiences, you've removed a lot of those negative thought patterns, then you are able to make more room for the positive. You're able to appreciate more of the positive. You have to ask yourself, though, is this the path that I want to continue down? That is the first step to fixing your trauma. Are you okay with accepting people being negative and passive aggressive and aggressive towards you? Chances are you're probably not. You are again going to ask yourself where that stems from. Yes, maybe childhood. Maybe it was a toxic relationship you entered in unknowingly, and now you found out like this person is a complete psychopath and narcissist. It happens, right? And I'm sure that you are doing everything you can to get away from that person. And now, what is your next step? What is the little thing that you can do every single day to make sure you prioritize some type of positivity in your life? Just one small positive thing. It has to be something that's so small, like going on a walk, getting vitamin D into your system, and just feeling better, working out. It has to be so small. Maybe you're a writer. Maybe you want to write out, journal every single day. Maybe you want to listen to a positive motivational video. Maybe you want to go to church. Maybe you just listen to a positive sermon online, a positive podcast. We are on this earth for a very short time. To be so unhappy and so unfulfilled because you've let other people dictate how you show up and how you feel in the world it's not acceptable. And I did this for so long. So that's why I'm telling you that the first step is you have to get to the root. You have to get to the root of that trauma and then ask yourself, is this the way you want to continue to show up and live? So after you've gotten to your head, you've asked yourself these questions, you've then written them down, you've gotten them out of your head, right? And you've gotten them onto a piece of paper of some kind. The third thing I want you to do is an emotional release exercise. You have to do it. I'm sorry. There's no way around it, because what is happening when you have trauma, it gets stuck in your body. And I don't want to get into all the details and all the things I've been researching, but I will just tell you that I have some back issues. I do have scoliosis, so that's one thing, right? Like we all have back issues, I'm sure. But I had so much pain. I'm in my 30s. I had so much pain at the end of the day on my back because I realized now it was trapped emotions. Like I thought all of this was a load of crap, to be honest. I was like, there's no way trapped emotions are what is making my physical back hurt. But when I tell you, when I started doing this emotional release, these exercises that I'm going to tell you about, my back has improved, I don't know, tenfold. I couldn't even tell you. I told my husband, I was shocked. I used to make him massage me, rub oil on me, give me heat baths, just anything, cold, hot compresses. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I am not going to even exist at 50. Like my back hurt so bad all of the time. Now I don't even remember the last time it hurt. I don't. I feel so good. And for me, my emotional release personally is crying. And it was because, again, childhood trauma, I was not allowed to show my emotions. I was a very emotional person. I have always tried to repress that side of me. I've always tried to be tougher than what I am. I've always tried to make sure people knew how tough I was and how independent I was, because I am. I am a strong person, but I don't have to prove that to anyone. That was trapped in my body. I also felt weak and insecure as a child because I was never allowed to voice anything that was emotionally wrong with me. And it was always knocked down. It was always suppressed, always made fun of, always torn down. And so it was trapped. It was trapped in my body. So when I have a good shadow work session and I get to the root of something that's been on my mind and been bothering me for so long, I cry. I cry. Like, not a cute cry either. It is not good. It's not pretty. It's like the Kim Kardashian meme cry. It's an ugly cry, okay? And it is not beautiful because it's not meant to be beautiful. Like, it's not cute, happy tears at a wedding. It's meant to be released because it's been trapped in me. So for what other people do, from what I hear, which I have tried so many things, trust me, but it has not worked for me like crying has. Like, I have literally felt physical like weight coming off my body as I'm sobbing because I'm like, wow, something unlocked in me that I just can't even explain, but I feel so good at the end of it. Other things you can do though are the Socratic shaking, or there's like some shaking release techniques that you can do. That does work for some people. Screaming into a pillow, punching a pillow. Tried it all, ladies, but it didn't really work for me. Working out, going on a run. What else? A couple others actually are deep breathing and dancing. right? And so whatever your emotional release exercise is, just make sure you're actually releasing the emotion. I think personally, when you work out, I don't know about anyone else, but my workouts are a little more difficult. So I will say that. I think yoga is probably maybe a nice calming exercise to do. However, I've never really felt a release on that either because I'm so focused on the workout. I'm just focused on moving my body, making it feel good. I do weights, I do kickboxing. You would think kickboxing would help me release negative pent up emotions. I hit the bag all of the time. No, it did not. It's just a workout to me. I couldn't separate the two and have that be an emotional release. It doesn't work for me personally. So I think just be careful and actually drop into your body. Drop into your body because so many of us are disconnected from our bodies to begin with that we don't even realize how bad it is. We think we do a workout and we're like, oh, we feel so good. Of course you feel good. You had endorphins coursing through your body to make you feel good. But that doesn't mean you emotionally released anything. And I'm not saying that to be rude or to put down anybody's emotional release because it worked for people. I just think sometimes it's so surface level that we aren't diving deep enough. I'm not saying you have to cry. Like some people are not going to cry at the end of a shadow work session. They're just not going to. But I do think like if you want to yell, you want to scream, again, we are emotional beings. Like just get it out of your system. Just stop holding back because society told you that's not for you. I do recommend being in a safe, quiet space alone to do all these things. I wouldn't say go in the middle of a coffee shop and start screaming. I don't think you should do that because you're just going to have more trauma, I'm sure, associated after that experience. But, be in a safe space. And when you are in a safe space to heal your trauma, you will realize like, wow, I don't have to live like this. I don't have to be in pain. I don't have to be hurting emotionally. I don't have to be sad all the time. I can actually like process my feelings and still be okay. And I can still go on about my day. And I did hear one creator talk about this, but you can throw a tantrum. Throw a tantrum. You want to hit something? I mean, be careful, but hit something. Yell, scream, throw something if you want to. That's, again, safe. But it's like when you think about it, kids, my daughter throws tantrums all the time and my baby's coming up through the ranks, but they don't care who's around. They don't care who they're inconveniencing. But when a kid is learning how to handle and regulate their emotions, it's actually really beautiful to see because I don't know about anyone else's kid, but I have seen quite a few kids do it on top of my own. Like sometimes she'll just lose her mind. And then I go and I give her a hug and she just sobs and falls into my body. Not every time, but sometimes she does. And then she looks at me and I'm like, are you okay? I'm okay, mommy. And she's okay. And she moves on with her life. Or sometimes she loses her crap and she doesn't want anybody to touch her. And then I sit there and I wait for her to finish losing her crap. And then she calms down and we move on with our day. Like it's just, she gets it out of her system and she's not harboring resentment around for everyone around her. And she just moves on with her life. It's actually really beautiful to see. So I know if you have kids, you have probably experienced this at some point. But it's when we are taught as a society when we get older that you can't throw a tantrum. You can't be not okay right now. You have to be smiling. You have to be on top of things. You cannot have a moment. There's no time for that. That's when the trauma gets stuck. Or if you have a parent that represses it and tells you to shut the hell up before they give you something to cry about, then yes, I'm sure that does get stuck in your body, but you have to release it. You have to. So the last thing I'm going to tell you is go to therapy. If you are a minority and you've been taught to demonize therapy because all of your business will be out, or you're weak because you go to therapy, or what is a therapist going to do for you, or whatever you've been told, doesn't matter. I don't know what to tell you. I've been to therapy. I love therapy. I was told the same thing. And I don't know what people are talking about because therapy is amazing. I will always advocate therapy. It is always good to talk to an objective, third-party, trained professional if you need help with something. That's why they exist. That's why you go to the grocery store, you get your groceries. You need groceries. You don't go anywhere else for your groceries. I don't suggest you talk to a friend because there's going to be some level of bias there, at least not in the beginning. You can tell them your findings, what you learned about yourself, and what you come up with at the end of your shadow work sessions, but don't ask for their feedback. Don't ask them to confirm like this person's a total B and they should agree with you and they should side with you. That's not what you're trying to accomplish here. You're trying to get help. That way you can be the best version of yourself that you were meant to be. And that is the only thing that you should be focused on right now, because after that happens, you will be so in tune with yourself, and you will accomplish so many things, and you will reach a new level of inner peace within yourself that everything else will fall into place in your life. And if that means getting help from a trained professional because you want to dive even deeper, when I tell you the things that I've uncovered in my therapy sessions, life-changing. Unfortunately, I didn't even know that I had some of this negative toxic behavior, which I was being a victim to. I was making excuses for the negative behavior and negative projections that people were putting onto me. I'm like, oh, it's just because they're hurt, or they lost their father, they lost their friend, or oh, this person stopped talking to them, so now I have to do extra to make sure they feel validated and vindicated, even though they treated me like crap. No. So you just get stuck in a cycle that sometimes someone has to pull you out of. And if you find a really good therapist, they won't sugarcoat it with you. They will bring it to your attention. You can take that information, do whatever you want with it. But I recommend you expose yourself to as much knowledge and as much information as you possibly can about yourself, because at the end of the day, you're with yourself the longest out of anyone that you meet in your life. Your relationship with yourself will always be. People will come and go, family members or not. But you are always going to have to be with yourself until the end of your day. You came into the world by yourself. You will leave out of this world by yourself. And your objective should be to better that relationship with yourself. And sometimes it takes an objective third party to help you through that. So I really do hope that this was helpful for everyone. And I cannot wait to make more videos like this. I do think that I'm going to make a shadow work journaling prompt video to help people as we go through diving deeper into the psychology of why we are the way we are, how we can get elevated, and what that looks like for us and our next steps in our journey of life. So please like, comment, subscribe. I am so excited to go on this journey with you guys. And until next time, bye.